Welcome back. SRQ Airport is expanding, but what does this mean for passengers? Prices are staying the same flying out of the airport because the planes are staying full. Sarasota was the only airport to decrease in passengers from 2015. Sarasota had nearly 1.2 million passengers. Fort Myers had 8.5 million and Tampa had nearly 19 million. While Sarasota was down about 3%, Fort Myers was up about 3% and Tampa up less than 1%. But that could also have to do with the population difference and the location of other cities compared to Sarasota. How does the expansion of the airport affect people wanting to fly into Sarasota, which can then affect the tourism in our city? And here to help us dive into all of this is Rick Piccolo, the SRQ president and CEO, and Norm Schimmel from the Tourist Development Council. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
Nice to be here.
And I want to reiterate, Rick, a little bit from Ray's story, which I thought was fantastic in telling us all of the reasons why. I think a lot of us wonder, why is this the way it is? But it kind of laid out all of the reasons, but sort of reiterate why we just can't magically add more flights to the airport.
Well, the airlines get to pick, since deregulation, they get to pick and choose where they go and when they go and what they charge. And given we benefit from our geography, and that the Sarasota-Bradenton area is a gorgeous area that lots of people want to come to. But the geography also hurts us because we're close to a number of other airports, major airports in Fort Myers and Tampa and even Orlando, and then secondary airports in St. Petersburg and in Punta Gorda. So it's a very competitive environment. And therefore, you take a facility like Tampa that has a much bigger catchment area and much more population. And it's, as I said in the story, it's basic economics. There's greater supply because of the demand there. And there's also a greater component of business flyers up there. Theirs is about 50-50 business versus leisure. Ours is about 30% business and 70% leisure. You know, leisure traveler is more price sensitive, but also has the ability to adjust more and shop more based on what their schedule could be more flexible. So those things the airlines realize, and they also realize that people tend to stay on one airline because of frequent flyer miles. I know people would rather fly out of SRQ when they can. They'll look at that flight and they'll see whether that schedule or the price fits their need. If it doesn't, they don't say, let me try another airline at SRQ. They go to that drop-down menu and they look at Tampa or they look at Fort Myers and they book the ticket. The airlines know that they act that way, and therefore they reinforce the very behavior that they don't like.
Which is, we see those cheaper flights out of Tampa, and we gravitate toward that, even though we have to drive up there and deal with all that hassle.
Yes, and it doesn't mean that you can't get a cheaper flight out of SRQ or that there's not competitive prices, but if there are different buckets of pricing in every aircraft, and if, let's say, 10% of the seats out of SRQ are in that lowest bucket and 10% of the seats out of Tampa, and there's 1,000 seats a day going to New York out of Tampa and 100 out of SRQ, then there's only 10 seats in that lower bucket here and 100 up there. So you might have already gone to the second, third, or fourth level bucket at SRQ because those other buckets are full, and there's still those lower buckets available in Tampa. As I said, it's basic supply and demand, and that's what drives that.
And then we have just a short left in this segment. We have much more coming up. But Norm, how does this affect our tourism numbers in Sarasota?
Well, firstly, you have a catch-22 because we really are looking to increase tourism. It's been very, very good, and Virginia Haley can tell you it's been fabulous for the last 6 years. But you also don't want to change the characteristics of Sarasota and Sarasota County. And going back to what Rick said, I don't think you want people here who, we have 365,000 in a county, who would like to have 1 million in a county. I don't think you're going to find that. And for that reason, you pay the price a little bit. But also, he hasn't touched on that yet, but you had a consolidation of airlines. And the consolidation of airlines hurt us very, very badly. Southwest especially hurt us.
Okay, so more to come on this. We're just getting warmed up, and we will be talking more about the growth at SRQ Airport and the effect on flights. But we will check in with our first alert forecast right after this. Welcome back. There have been some improvements and expansions made to SRQ Airport in the past couple of years, but is it enough to increase the number of passengers flying in and out of Sarasota? And how does this affect tourists who are coming to the Suncoast instead of Tampa, Orlando, Fort Myers, other in the surrounding area? Here to help us discuss all of this is Rick Piccolo, the SRQ president and CEO, and Norm Schimmel from the Tourist Development Council. And Rick, I want to talk a little bit more about those improvements that have been made and more that are about to be made. Do you think this makes a difference for people? Maybe they fly out once, they see how nice it's been, and they want to come back.
Yeah, we look to try and make the airport as convenient and easy as possible. I think it's one of the cleanest airports in the world. And our effort is to make the airport experience as pleasant as can be. Travel is a very stressful activity nowadays, and so we try to differentiate our product to be something that's worth, if you have to pay a few dollars more, that you think you're getting a value for that and that you feel you've gotten your value. I like to tell people we're a lot like Whole Foods, and Tampa's like Publix. We don't have all the selections that they have, but we try to give you a level of quality that reflects the pricing that you're paying. Although I will stress that our parking is cheaper than at other facilities, and we always ask people to factor in the cost of going to those other facilities. Sometimes I think people lose sight of the fact that the parking is more expensive, that a tank of gas is going to be used. So if you're saving $50 or $75 on your ticket, at the end of the day, you really haven't saved much money, and you've gone through all the trouble of driving up to Tampa and back.
Now, I will say it's a lot more trouble, but myself have noticed if you do an off-site parking and you still factor in the gas, I mean, sometimes it's $200 more to fly out of SRQ. So what would it take to get it maybe a little bit more competitive?
Well, I think some of that goes back to what I talked about, the different buckets. So you may be comparing a lower fare at the other airport that still is in that bucket versus a higher fare at SRQ. But I think part of it is just as we build as a community and as we continue as an airport to attract more service, it'll give the public more choices. We're working very hard on getting more service. We talk to airlines all the time. We've made 3 headquarter visits just in the last 2 months. We've been on joint trips with both CVBs from both Sarasota and Bradenton on a number of times. We have great support from those 2 CVBs, and we offer, as Ray said in the story, free fees to airlines for 2 years for any new service. You can't get any cheaper than free. Pay for all the marketing. So we make every effort, but as we've said in the story too, it's a very competitive environment, and it's very hard to get an airline to add service. One daily flight, when United came in with the first Chicago flight, is about a $25 to $30 million commitment by United Airlines just for that one flight. So it shows you some of the economics are a very tough thing to work through.
Right, easier said than done. And Norm, how do we balance, as Rick had pointed out in Ray's story, we would need to grow exponentially to get these, more flight options.
We would, but first thing I was going to say, if you've never heard anybody say they had a bad experience coming into SRQ, the experience is always the gateway to paradise, if I want to use that word. A lot of you people do use that word. Yet you have some things that are happening, though. Hopefully, the negotiations with the Atlanta Braves will come to fruition, and hopefully they'll come to fruition sometime in the next 4 to 8 weeks. And I think Rick had tremendous foresight in booking how many flights from Atlanta?
We have 6 to 7 daily flights to
boy,
Atlanta, so it should make it easier for them.
That's foresight years ago, boy, to plan that out. But hopefully the Braves will be that'll be put to bed, and there you have a whole new ball game, especially in February, March, and April. And the other thing too is you may have a farm team down there that will play all summer too. So I think that adds into it. We are growing. We are growing as a community. People find out about us. People come down here for vacation, and people suddenly decide that perhaps they'd like to live here, and that's what you're seeing all around. That will play directly into the hands of the airport. But I want to go back to what I said initially, and I flew 2.4 million miles. I know everything about flying from almost both ends of it, and there's always a good experience coming into SRQ.
I do agree with that. It's one of those, it almost makes it stress-free. If for someone who hasn't traveled out of SRQ yet, how would you describe it versus traveling out of a larger airport?
Oh, if you start a vacation here, coming into that airport is the start of the vacation. You're treated so well, and it is so easy to get your bags. It's so easy to get out. It's so easy to get a car that it becomes part of the vacation. Before I moved here, I had a place in Longboat Key, and I would come down here for a couple of weeks a year, and we'd look forward to coming into the airport, and the airport was the start of the vacation.
Right. And Rick, for people who are not used to having these, maybe they have moved down here, they moved from, say, from New York, and they're used to having every flight option in the world. Have you seen people kind of express that frustration? Is that something they're concerned about?
I think the greater frustration isn't so much the pricing as it is the number of nonstop destinations, and that goes back to the size of our community. But I like to stress to people that we fly to most of the major hubs in the Northeast and the Midwest, so you can pretty much get anywhere in the world with one stop out of SRQ. And I think that's an important thing from an economic standpoint, that when we have the 3 network carriers that exist in this country, American, United, and Delta, When we say network, it means they have a network that goes worldwide with code share partners and that type of thing. I like to tell people, even Southwest does not have a code share partner, so you're not going to use your frequent flyer miles to fly to Paris on Southwest. They just don't go there. So we offer you connections to the world, and in a global economy, that's critical for the community. And the important thing is the airport actually has a nearly $1 billion a year economic impact on the community. Over 11,000 jobs are derived from our activity, with over 50 businesses and 2,000 jobs on the airport itself. And all of that is done, people don't understand, we don't have any taxing power. Our $22 million a year budget is paid for through our business operations. So we provide $1 billion worth of economic benefit to the community at absolutely no cost to the taxpayer. So I think the community gets a pretty good deal, even if we can't satisfy every need that they want. And we certainly want to satisfy their needs.
And what about marketing? You talked about marketing to airlines and negotiating with them, but what about marketing to people in our community, maybe getting the word out about the benefits of flying out of SRQ?
Well, we actually do a lot of marketing in the community. We have 3 billboards. We do newsletters. Actually, our emails go out to about 110,000 people. When you use our Wi-Fi in the terminal, it captures your email. And then we do some advertising. We do a lot of sponsorships. We're sponsored with the Orioles and with the Pirates and hopefully with the Braves when they show up. And we do a lot of advertising in the community. But it's very hard, especially as the community grows and new people come. It's a re-education process all the time.
I think the marketing should be just a picture of the security line with very few people in it, and you're like, okay, how do I sign up for a flight at this airport?
If you're in Ed Smith Stadium for a ball game, you hear all the time, why can't we get a direct flight from Baltimore, Washington area down here? And it's not as easy said and done, but it's not like people don't want the flights here. People want the flights here. People want to come into the airport. It's a beautiful airport. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Right, and then anything else that we didn't touch on, Rick, that you'd want to share with our viewers?
Well, as I said, we're working to make their experience as wonderful as possible. We're trying to be as cost effective as possible, and we're one of the few airports in this country that has no debt. And we've just finished remodeling the entire terminal at a cost of about $23 million. So I like to tell people it's like getting a new house with no mortgage. So that at least the local community can have faith in the fact that they have a wonderful facility, they have no financial stake in it, and they don't have to worry about it becoming a burden on the taxpayer. And as the community grows, the airport is ready for that growth. We can handle about 50% more capacity without any need to expand more or borrow money. So we really are in good financial shape that way. And while Tampa's a wonderful airport, a very big airport, their debt load right now is about $1.1 billion. So we do have some advantages.
Yes, okay. We have our final thoughts when we return. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guests are now joining us with their final thoughts. And Rick, I want to start with you tell us a little bit more about the next round of improvements that are being made at the airport.
Sure. We just started a $12 million new jet bridge project that'll put 13 new jet bridges around the airport's gates for the next year it'll take to complete that project. We should open some covered parking in about a month, and then the rent-a-car area is going to also get covered. And then in May, we hope to open the new air traffic control tower, which is a $27 million project. And again, I stress that all these projects done without incurring any debt and without being a burden on the taxpayer. So we're real proud of our continuous improvement program. We're going to continue to try and make everyone's experience wonderful. And
not just at the airport. You're all, like you mentioned before, you're across the country all the time talking with airlines, constantly trying to bring new flights in. So it's not like you guys aren't working extremely hard on trying to do this.
That's our number one goal, and the thing we work the most on is trying to get more air service, and we'll continue to do that while improving the facility at the same time.
Great. And Norm, just last thoughts for you on our airport here.
We try and make his life easier, because the more promotion we have, whether it's the World Rowing Championships, whether it's the arts, and whether it's the sciences that we have here, the more that we create as far as tourism is concerned, the easier his job is. And that's what we continue to try and do.
And I assume that with the World Rowing Championships in a month, we'll start to see a lot more traffic coming through SRQ. Well, last night we spoke about the Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor fight happening on Saturday night. McGregor, a mixed martial artist who fights in the UFC, is making his professional boxing debut against the 49-0 Mayweather. The fight will take place at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. McGregor is was a 4-1 underdog. Not so bad for a guy without a professional boxing fight under him. Well, we had a panel of experts last night, and 3 out of the 4, and 1 was kind of wavering, did pick Mayweather to win. We went to Facebook to ask you what you thought about this upcoming fight. Nate kicks off our comments by saying, there's a chance of a flash KO from McGregor just because of his skills, but in reality, he's going into a ring with someone who's never lost against boxers. Ross adds, what a farce. It's a disgrace to both fighting styles. And James closes out the comments by saying there's only one possible outcome. They both get rich. That is true. If you would like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/news@7. And you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And a big thank you to our guest tonight, Rick Piccolo, the SRQ President and CEO, and Norm Schimmel from the Tourist Development Council. Thank you all for joining us tonight.